welcome, welcome. First, before I start, how's everyone doing today?
Awesome.
Awesome. That's what I love to hear. That's Kara's favorite word. So I'm
so word too.
I am so honored to be here in this space with you all and to be kicking off the second part of our series, Can You Hear Us Now? Black Women in the Workplace. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Dr. Jeanita Pritchett, and I will be your host and moderator for today's discussion. We are the founders of Facilitate to Motivate, and the founders include Ms. Kara Robinson and Dr. Christina Jones. Joining us today, we have a phenomenal group of women that are joining us that will be taking part of the discussion. I'm just going to mute real quick. There we go. All right. So for those that don't know about Facilitate to Motivate, our company was actually born out of the furlough last year. We wanted to come up with a mechanism for really reaching out and connecting with others and providing them with the tools that they need to succeed. So during our nice 6-week break, we decided to combine our efforts, our backgrounds in science, technology, and organizational development, social and emotional learning to create this company known as Facilitate to Motivate, or F2M. Our goal is to help both individuals and organizations get their talent pool into the ideal mental space to be able to achieve success on their own terms. And so it is our pleasure to welcome you all to the second part of our series. Now, this series really came about in response to all the tragic incidents that were taking place over the last few months, from the murders of George Floyd to Breonna Taylor to Ahmaud Arbery, which all ultimately led up to the protesting that took place all around the world, demanding an equal justice system for the Black community. Now, what these incidents also shined light on was the fact that these inequities actually exist in many different aspects of life, from healthcare and education to the housing market to in the workplace. There are many places in which there are disparities that the Black community face. And so our goal is to use our platform as a mechanism to provide a safe space for Black women to express their thoughts, their feelings on the current climate, and to provide suggestions for how to move forward. We've done a lot of talking in the past about what's going on, but we really want to challenge people to come up with strategies to change the dynamics of the workplace for Black women. So our goal really is to educate, inform, and inspire changes that support the success of Black women around the world. Now, before we get into the discussion, it is my distinguished honor to introduce our panelists. We have some phenomenal women that have joined us today, and it is an honor for them to be in this space with us and to be sharing their stories with you all. So first up, we have Ms. Tanisha Agramonte. Tanisha Agramonte is a highly regarded civil rights champion whose personal and professional mission is to advance equitable opportunities for all. She has over 25 years of experience in the equal employment opportunity, diversity, civil rights, and human relations arenas. She is the architect of the First Generation Professionals Initiative, a first of its kind in the federal government diversity and inclusion program. She has held leadership positions with various federal agencies, including the Departments of Commerce, Veterans Affairs, Army and Air Force, and the U.S. Small Business Administration. In those positions, she has worked at various locations throughout the world, including England, Japan, Germany, and stateside. Ms. Agramonte was appointed to the Senior Executive Service, or SES, in 2013. She currently serves as the Director of Office of the Civil Rights for the Department of Commerce, or DOC. In her early life, Ms. Agramonte was identified as an at-risk youth. With the help of mentors and educators who saw potential in her, she was able to overcome significant challenges. Because of their guidance, she realized the potential they saw in her and was encouraged to reach unimaginable heights. For this reason, and as a first-generation professional, Tanisha is compelled to pay it forward by ensuring all people have the access, opportunities, encouragement, and support needed to realize their fullest potential. She received her bachelor's degree in mass communications from California State University, Hayward, and her master's degree in human relations from the University of Oklahoma. Welcome, Ms. Tanisha Agramonte. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right. Next up, we have Alexis Bennett, Ms. Alexis Bennett. Alexis Bennett is an experienced biomedical researcher with nearly 10 years of laboratory experience especially in diabetes and cardiometabolic complications. She completed her undergraduate and graduate degrees at Purdue University, at Wisconsin-Madison in 2013 and 2015, respectively. Her undergraduate research with LSAMP on yeast cell division appeared in publication in Molecular Biology of the Cell, and her graduate research investigating the pathogenicity of a knockout variant of Salmonella was published in Archives of Microbiology. Following her graduate studies, Alexis gained employment with Lilly Research Laboratories at Eli Lilly and Company in 2015. She credits her time at Lilly for nurturing her interest in the cardiometabolic and diabetes complications and cementing her passion for biomedical sciences. As a research associate, she has executed and developed preclinical assays integral for a molecule's continued progression through the development pipeline. She joined Georgia Institute of Technology Systems Mass Spectrometry Core as a research technician at the start of 2020. In her new role, she supports the Atlanta, Georgia research community by performing tailored metabolomics and lipidomic assays and contributes to the NIH supporting molecular transducers of physical activity consortium. In addition to her scientific pursuits, Alexis prioritizes community advocacy and service. She has participated in science outreach and aftercare programs for elementary school students, volunteered with community gardens and food pantries, and organized a volunteer experience for the Eli Lilly's Day of Service. She learned valuable skills in the community, organizing from her time with a grassroots organization in Indianapolis. She is captivated by molecular mechanisms of health and disease and committed to serving her community through service and science. The other parts of her life typically involve outdoors, art, music, food, counterculture, and cats. Thank you so much, Alexis, for joining us. And last, and certainly not least, is Danielle Graves. Ms. Danielle Graves is a certified life and leadership coach with a breadth of experience transforming organizations via human resources, technology, inclusion, and thought leadership. With her high-powered clients, create the shifts necessary to reimagine, realign, and recalibrate the lives and careers of their wildest dreams. A fresh voice that the coaching world has been waiting for, Danielle fuses popular culture, corporate know-how, and strategy in a way that helps her clients feel heard and understood. When you add a knack for illuminating millennials' superpowers and how to wield them, it's clear why she has a proven track record for transforming lives, careers, organizations, and businesses. Known for stoking the inner fire in every client she works with, Danielle coaches from her own experience of life-changing breakthroughs. Before bravely stepping into entrepreneurship, she spent more than a decade with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, where she held several key roles. As she quickly rose up the ranks from intern to manager, she realized that her rise as an African-American millennial with the organization was more of the exception than the standard. Deciding to do something about it, she started a small leadership strategy circle aimed at leveling the playing field for African-American millennials. The group soon morphed into a culture-changing movement serving hundreds across the organization, all drawn by the rich professional relationships and unconventional dialogue on leadership and personal development they had to find elsewhere. It's power moves like these that prove why Danielle is the coach millennials and leaders at large need. With her by their side, her clients gain clarity and experience breakthroughs necessary to conquer their words with courage and confidence. Danielle holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in Applied Mathematics from Elizabeth City State University, a Master's of Science degree in Information Technology from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and an Executive Certificate in Leadership Coaching from Georgetown University. Welcome, Ms. Danielle Graves, or Danielle the Coach, as she so beautifully goes by. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. I'm excited to hear your stories. I can't wait to kick off this discussion. Now, before we start the discussion, I wanted to actually do a quick poll. All right, and so you guys weren't privy to these questions earlier because I wanted some honest responses, okay? So everybody that's in this room and those that are watching us live, feel free to drop a me or raise a hand or show support in the chat box. I want you all to raise your hand if you have ever been the only Black woman present in a room, meeting, or a conference. All right. I also want you to raise your hand if you've ever feared showing up to work with your hair in its natural state because you think others may deem it less than professional. All right. Raise your hand if you have felt that you couldn't respond to a colleague or a supervisor's microaggressions because you didn't want to be labeled as the angry Black woman. And last but not least, raise your hand if you have had actions deemed as aggressive rather than assertive as your white counterparts would typically be called. So the reason I wanted to do that quick poll was really just to set the stage to help the audience realize that these are not isolated incidences. The topics that we're going to be discussing today, this idea of being the only woman in the room or the only Black woman in a room, really transcends across several different agencies. And we wanted you all to see that this really affects people from very early on in their career to much later in their career. So we're honored to be able to host this platform, to be able to share these experiences related to this topic. Now, the scientist in me loves some good facts and stats. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of the conversation, I want to give you all just a few facts just to calibrate the entire audience, okay? So in a 2018 survey for the women in the workplace, where they looked at over 279 companies that were employing more than 13 million people, where they talked to 64,000 employees about their workplace experiences, more than 90% of the companies said that they prioritize gender and racial diversity, and they know that it leads to better business results. So that's great, that's awesome. However, when they talked to the employees, only 42% of the employees said that they saw gender diversity truly as a company priority, and even less, only 22% said they saw racial diversity as a company priority. So we're saying that it matters, but we're not seeing that transcend into the workplace through the staff. In 2018, Forbes posted an article where they talked about for every 100 men promoted to managers, only 60 Black women are. 40% of Black women have had their judgment questioned in their area of expertise, whereas only 27% of men have. Only 35% of Black women said their manager promotes their contributions to others, whereas 46% of men said their manager does just that. And 41% of Black women said they never have a substantive interaction with a senior leader about their work, whereas only 27% of men have said that. In the 2019 report called Being Black in Corporate America, an Intersectional Exploration, they found that Black professionals are more likely to encounter prejudice and microaggressions than any other racial or ethnic group. And they are less likely than their white counterparts to have access to senior leaders and are less likely to have support from their managers. And you may be wondering, why was the question about hair important? Why do we care about natural hair? It shouldn't matter, right? Well, in 2014, Time published an article titled "The US Military Rolls Back Restrictions on Black Hairstyles." 2014, just a few years ago. And in that, the Defense Secretary announced that US military has rolled back prohibitions on popular Black hairstyles within its ranks. Hairstyles like dreadlocks or two-strand twists and other natural hairstyles have been previously prohibited. Styles including afros were also banned in an effort to maintain uniformity within the military population. After this announcement, 3 branches of service, including Army, Air Force, and Navy, now allow service members to wear their hair in two-strand twists. Yay! The Army also increased the size of acceptable braids, and both the Army and Air Force removed the term matted and unkept from their grooming guidelines. And then last but not least, those that may not be familiar, in 2019, July of 2019, California introduced what's known as the Crown Act. Crown, which stands for Create a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair, really focused on, it was a law that focused on prohibiting race-based hair discrimination, which is the denial of employment or educational opportunities because of hair texture or protective styles. This really galvanized a lot of support from federal and state legislators, and it's currently, really is a movement to end hair discrimination nationwide. So I hope that the audience understands why all of this is important, because for Black women, their hair is something that could be the make or break if they get a job or if they're asked to leave a job. In fact, on that same website for the Crown Act, they've noted that 80% of Black women have felt that they had to change their hair from its natural state just to fit in the office. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get the conversation started. And so we have some very successful ladies here, right? Successful degrees upon degrees and everything else. You all clearly have been able to earn a seat at the table in your various organizations. But you've also noticed that perhaps you are the only one in the room that looks like yourself. So have you ever felt it necessary to defend your position or role within an organization or within a community that you're representing? And I will open the floor to whoever would like to kick us off.
I'll start. I can say that I absolutely have had to defend a position that I held, and actually it was a role within a position. I served as a project manager of a major like IT re-engineering effort, and project manager is the project manager. They are managing all of the roles and the people involved in bringing, from a technology sense, the technology to life. And I realized that one of my supervisors was having conversations with one of my direct reports about the project. And I guess they had thoughts and they were strategizing independent of me. But it came back to me because of the relationship that I had with my team and the rapport that I had already established. And so for me, it put me in a position where I felt like my ability to lead was being undermined. And for me, it's, well, if I'm the project manager, why aren't you coming to me? Why aren't we strategizing together? Why aren't we having these conversations? And so it put me in a situation where I had to have an uncomfortable conversation, but a necessary conversation. And of course, having to have it delicately so that I'm not the angry Black woman in that particular situation. But it really made me hyper aware of the fact that I'm in this position that's esteemed and has significant impact, but yet I'm being overlooked. I'm being looked straight through, like I'm Casper the Friendly Ghost. Like, do you see me or do you not see me? Am I just a placeholder or am I here for a reason? And so it really caused me to begin to realize who I was in that particular organization, in that particular team, and what I was up against. And it caused me to have to rope in, I'll say, extra resources to level set the playing field, if you will, and also to manage my confidence because it took a hit because it was unexpected. So yes, I've experienced it, and it didn't feel good at all. For me, it felt like unnecessary roughness.
Thank you, Danielle. Alexis or Tanisha, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I can go next. Times that I've had to defend my role or are kind of linked to when I felt undervalued to the organization. When I first started with Eli Lilly, I was a contractor, which is kind of a controversial way to bring people into an organization. You're able to pay them less. You don't have to account for their benefits. It's kind of on the contracting company to do that. However, you're expected to do the same work where Lilly would salary you if you were working for Lilly directly. So I was a contractor, trying to develop relationships with Lilly employees to work with Lilly full time. And my supervisor was sort of exploiting this eagerness and didn't want to pay me for the overtime that I was doing to meet his requests for experiments. So I felt like I was trying to be taken advantage of just because I was in a position of wanting to elevate my career. Another time where I felt undervalued was in a later role with Lilly. I just didn't feel utilized. A couple different labs I didn't feel completely utilized. So I wasn't really challenged at work, and I brought it up to my supervisors that I could do more and that I wanted to do more and network more and be involved in more projects and develop different skills. And it just these weren't nurtured. So I don't know if I necessarily had to defend it, but I feel like I've had to advocate for my value to an organization a few different times. Yeah.
Thank you. And last but not least, Tanisha.
So I was unmuted earlier, and I've been on back-to-back calls all morning, and we've been in this telework environment for 3 months, and I'm still struggling with coming off of mute. each time. So I just want to add on to the comments already made. I think what is fundamental to all of these feelings of where we feel we're underutilized, that we're undervalued in our positions, is first and foremost trying to determine whether or not we were placed in the position or in the role as just a perfunctory action. Right? Because when we talk about diversity and inclusion initiatives, sometimes people believe that to mean we have to hire diversity for diversity's sake. And as a D&I practitioner, I will be the first to say, no, that is not the goal of D&I programs. It is not just to count heads, but it is to make heads count. Right? So look at your policies, practices, and procedures. Make sure that there are no barriers for hiring and promoting and including diverse candidates, right? Making sure that your practices will equate to giving full and fair consideration to candidates who otherwise would not have gotten that consideration. But once you put them in that role, empower them to lead, empower them to contribute. And so what I'm hearing from the ladies who have spoken so far is they did not get that empowerment and had to be their own advocate and fight. And sometimes that is extremely lonely because, again, it feels like it's self-serving, right? It feels like I shouldn't have to fight for this. I'm already in this place. But I think by us sharing these stories, my best hope is that people understand these microaggressions, micro inequities that make us retreat sometimes and not contribute to our fullest, right? So what I think about as a leader is, what did we miss out on when you felt overlooked, when you were not empowered to be that project leader or be, whatever. So that's what I think about voice equity. It's the last thing I'll speak on. Even at my level, right, our levels, I just had to share with someone the other day that I didn't feel like I had voice equity, which is different than voice equality, right? Because if there are already systems in place that make your voice inequitable, right? So even if you outrank someone in your position, the lower ranked person may be closer to someone in the organization. They may have their ear, in different things. So now that means leaders who are in your corner and ally have to be able to recognize when you're in a meeting and your voice does not have the same equity as someone else, right? And so again, I just think it's awareness, but I think we all feel, and what I heard from your stories is, I just don't feel like my voice is heard. I feel like you just saw right through me as if I'm invisible, like I didn't exist. And that is not a good feeling. And not only that, for an organization, it is a waste of our salaries. Because if you're going to have me sitting in this position, but you're not going to listen to me, you're not going to leverage my expertise and my knowledge, that is a poor business practice for that organization.
Thank you. Kara or Christine, any thoughts would you like to add?
I definitely want to as what Tanisha is saying, it's like and Alexis, it's being in an environment where you feel underutilized. And if anyone knows me personally knows, I like to say I have a hungry brain. I have a thirst for knowledge and learning and understanding, and I never want to stop. It's a part of me. And when I'm in an organization, my tendency is to, how do we make things better? That's my operating. Recognize what is, and I want to know, how do we improve this? Because I believe that there's room for improvement everywhere. No matter how little, there's always room for improvement. So I'm always operating in that, how do we improve? But if my voice doesn't have the equity that Tanisha was talking about, or I am not even seen as it's like, if I'm proposing a solution and they're like, well, you're just a low-level staffer. You're not one of us. You're not there yet. Give yourself some time to get to know the organization before you can propose any kind of, solutions. And then you get frustrated as a person. And as an individual who has a hungry brain, I start searching. Okay, where else can I go? And I will use my brain. And I operate in that mental space. So that's what I think organizations are really not benefiting and not getting the best bang for their buck when they do not utilize us to our full potential.
Kara took the words out of my mouth. I like that Tanisha asked that question, like, what are we losing as an organization? What are you losing when your staff or your workers, whomever, don't feel valued? Because for me, when I don't feel valued, I'm like, Karen, what's my exit strategy? How can I get what I can get within this role? I know that I'm a great worker. I will be an asset wherever you put me. So let me find a place that's going to value that. And when I've been in that position, that's my next thought. And I've been in situations where I didn't feel valued, and it's interesting because you determine, okay, so you won't listen to me, or you won't believe that I can perform the job that I was put here for. Let me get my direct supervisor, someone who I know believes in that and in what I can do, and has no question about my ability. And then whomever will listen to that person. I have been fortunate to where my direct supervision, formally and informally, for the most part throughout my career, has not questioned my abilities. And yeah, when that person's brought in, then it's a reset, right? So yeah, but we have to get past that. If I'm put in a position, you should not question, what it is that I'm doing.
Thank you so much. So along those lines of not feeling valued and not being able to possibly show up in the best space, have you ever experienced situations where you felt that you could not be your authentic self at work, and as a result, has that ever led to feeling the need to code switch? And I'll turn it over to anybody that wants to take that question first.
Sure. I would say that there definitely have been more instances than not where I have shown up in that way. But for me, it's been not bringing my full self to work. So it's kind of like the tip of the iceberg, or just scratching the surface. I give you enough for you to know that I'm capable and I'm competent. But there's a lack of trust at the outset for me until I know that it's a safe space for me to be my most authentic self. And I found that for a long time, for years, I was showing up as very, very reserved. Like I had my work face, I had my work persona. And not to say that there was a stark difference between who I was in the workplace and who I was outside of the workplace, but I wasn't a free sharer just because I didn't want to give anybody anything that they could potentially use against me at any given time, because they didn't understand me and my culture and my story and just me as a person. So for me, it was like the bare minimum to get the work done and to be successful, whatever success looked like in that particular season. But I didn't feel at all the time comfortable with, hey, this is Danielle. This is who I am. Welcome to my space. The welcome was there, but it's enough to check the box and get the job done. And then I'm going to go home and let my hair down. So that was how I showed up a lot in that season of my experience.
So I'll add to it, and I want to go back to something real quick that it's Christina, right, said earlier in terms of if she works in a space, and I promise you, Jeanita, I'm going to talk about the code switching, but it's important to add on to something Christina said, that if she works in a space where she does not feel valued, that she's at a point in her career now where she has the confidence to have an exit strategy and go somewhere where she will be valued versus fighting, to be heard and seen in that space. But one of the strategies that she talked about, and I want to build on that because I think it's so important, and that is sometimes your direct supervisor may not be your ally that you need or as supportive, but another strategy is, if you love the company, you love the space you're in, is to go around that person and build up allies with people who have equal power and influence as your boss. Because then what will happen is, if your boss ever goes to that person and tries to undermine you, that person will say, no, wait, Christina? No, every time I worked with Christina, she was brilliant. She was, whatever. That was one of the best pieces of advice I got from an executive coach. It was like, build up your allies around. And then at some point, other people will start saying, wait a minute, I know Christina has expertise in that. Are we going to bring her in? on this event. So I wanted to say that because I thought that was important. But in terms of code switching, so Jeanita knows yesterday I wrote an article that I posted on LinkedIn about a picture is 1,000 words, because it was my first headshot with my sister locks. And I was feeling myself, and I said, this is the last vestige of constraints that I placed on myself, because I share with everyone that I know we are judged by how we show up. And there's three things that people look at on how we show up: how we speak, how we behave, and how we look. Right. And so I hit on all three of those things yesterday, but I know with regards to two pieces, how we speak. Growing up in Los Angeles, very
We may have a bit of a connection issue for Tanisha. Hopefully she'll unmute or unfreeze in a second. Gotta love technology. So Tanisha, your connection is not that well. It's freezing up a bit. Oh, okay.
Did I go out for a second? Thank you.
Yes, we're back.
Okay, back. So even when I graduated college, I used to always tease people and say, I'm just a hood girl with a degree, right? And so when I came into the workplace, I dealt with a lot of imposter syndrome. And so I think I almost overcompensated with my diction. Like my enunciation was so crisp, my pronunciation, I made sure that I stuck with words that I knew, because I was so afraid to use words out of context or to mispronounce, word. I was like obsessive about the quality of grammar that I used, right? But I am so happy to be at a place now where I have realized that when I am my authentic self, when I'm able to share where I come from, that I realize that really actually helps me in producing. I've done this First Generation Professionals Initiative. I wouldn't be able to do that if my background wasn't from a low income first generation college student. So it adds value to my work to be my authentic self and to be okay with when I'm around people and they're talking about they belong to the Links, or they grew up in Jack and Jill, and that's just our people I'm talking about, let alone others with Hamptons and vacationing in Europe, and that is not my experience, right? But I'm okay with that because I know that adds value from their standpoint, but what I bring to the table is nothing to be ashamed of, and also that adds value. And when I feel good with me and who I am and what I truly represent, then I'm more engaged. I'm more committed.
So Tanisha, I see a comment in the chat box that said that they missed what you were saying about growing up in California. So if you could just elaborate just real quick on that bit that you've mentioned about growing up in California and how that set the stage for who you are. They wanted to.
All right. And I'm sorry, I must be Wi-Fi in my house. I'm gonna have to talk to my husband about that. But I was saying I grew up in LA, very much an at-risk youth. So I got suspended the first time when I was 8 years old, suspended every year until I was finally expelled from all LA schools when I was 15 or 16 years old. And so, as someone who started off with community college for about 3 years, then another 4 years at a state university, it took me 7 years to get my undergrad degree, paying my way and working through school. That came with a lot of shame, right? Because of my background. And so when I entered the workforce, I was trying to code switch so much, like overcompensating, so I would not be revealed, right? Because I didn't want anyone to think, and I think Danielle said this, that I didn't belong there. So I would drive up on a military base. I'd switch my music from hip hop, which that's me. I'm saying that's what I grew up with. But now I'm switching it to jazz. I'm switching it to 80s pop, whatever it is, because I didn't want anyone to think negatively on me, and I didn't want to be revealed and give anyone an excuse for why they thought I didn't belong in the spaces I was in.
Thank you so much. Alexis, do you have any comments?
Yes. So I related so much to what Danielle was saying about essentially not even showing up to work. There's this persona switch that you filter so much of yourself out before you even get into the building that I almost feel unrecognizable. I think before I started really being in professional environments, I started this unlearning process of my socialization, where I would contribute to uncomfortable scenarios, comments of anti-Blackness, or just anything very obtuse. So I guess I wouldn't say that obviously I experienced code switching, but my experience in very acute, uncomfortable circumstances is to kind of look away and just be still, and don't make any sudden movements, just be quiet, just don't participate in it. And I just haven't gotten to the point where I can confront it yet. But I'm working on not laughing along. I'm working on I guess not necessarily, I wouldn't say that feeling authentic, but I guess working on not perpetuating it or making people feel that it's okay to say or to do.
Jeanita, I want to piggyback on Christina and then Tanisha. And so when Christina talked about like having the exit strategy, basically like I'm the prize, wherever I go, like I'm the prize, I know my value, I have options. And then Tanisha's supporting comment about gaining allies or sponsors in and around the organization. So I lived that. And so back in 2014, I had enough. And I had one microaggression too many, and I really started to look at myself holistically and I had to remind myself who I was. I'm educated, I have 2 degrees, really wasn't leveraging either one in a significant capacity, so I had options. And so I made a hard decision, but I made it a lot easier when I reminded myself who I was. And I said, you know what? I don't deserve this. I don't have to deal with this. I'm taking my talents to South Beach, like LeBron. And so I gave my 2 weeks notice. And to Tanisha's point, there were people who advocated for me when they found out I was leaving. I didn't ask for the support. I was out. I was done. And I said, "Ooh, peace. I got my peace back." New beginnings. And in all honesty, I was recruited back by a different division in the same organization. And that did so much for my psyche. It did so much for my confidence. It reassured me that in that instance, it wasn't me, and that I do bring value, that other people see me. I do have advocates in places I didn't even realize. I had people tell me, we can't afford to lose you. And so it renewed my hope in the organization, and it helped me see that the pockets where they exist are bad, and they can make our work life miserable, but people are watching. And so if we stay true to who we are and maintain some integrity about how we're showing up and our work ethic, that when the going gets tough, people may not always advocate unsolicited like they did for me, but I would encourage anyone listening who may be feeling this way, leverage your network. Leverage your network. Don't be extreme like me in that instance. I wasn't expecting to be recruited back, but know that people see you. And especially if you've been doing your part, like leverage your network and ask for the help that you need.
Thank you so much. Along those same lines about leveraging your network and providing some tips for people that may be finding themselves in some of these situations, we've heard a lot that oftentimes Black women tend to feel or suffer from imposter syndrome. And so what strategies would you suggest for someone struggling to find their voice or that may be dealing with imposter syndrome?
Selfishly, I'm going to say, hire you a coach. Hire you a coach. A coach will change your life. And I speak from experience. And if a coach isn't an investment that you are able to make, then I highly suggest 2 other things. Find solid mentors that understand you and have seen you operate in your excellence and can remind you of who you are. And also, if you don't have a personal board of directors, like your personal board of directors, people who know you, champion for you, and you can be your most authentic and transparent self with them, and you also trust the feedback and the input that they give you that supports you in being the best version of yourself. Leverage your personal board of directors. You need somebody to hype you up, ask for it. You know, there's different ways that you can get it, but I do recommend getting a coach.
Imposter syndrome is something that I'm still very much working through. I would say what's helped me is to build my network outside of my immediate work group or my immediate supervisor, to kind of get more data points on what I am outside of myself. So I tend to be my worst critic. The more people that I have that can affirm that I am not everything that I think that I am, the better. But in terms of, I don't have the type of advice that Danielle might be able to give, because I feel very steeped in it. And yeah, it might be something that goes deep enough that you should get a coach or a therapist to work through.
I think so.
Janita?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep
No.
going in and out. I'm not sure if it's my internet. Can you hear me and it's coming through?
We
Okay.
can hear you. I wanted to touch to Alexis. I think one of the biggest things that you said is the fact that you're aware that you're in this situation and that you're feeling these things. And so awareness is key. Once you're aware of things, you're able to actually make changes, put people in place to help you out. So I think just having that ability to say and declare, I'm standing in imposter syndrome is the first step to being able to come out of it. And I'll turn it over.
Okay. I don't know if someone was able to, because I went out for a second, if we actually defined imposter syndrome or not. Okay. So when someone, regardless of that, tells you you are competent and you are capable and you are smart, will dismiss all of that data and internalize that they really are not smart, that they are incompetent and incapable. So it really is a self-driven thing, how we see ourselves in spite of the data. So I agree with you. Awareness is the first part. The second is learning where that comes from. Sometimes it can be because you're in groups, like many of you have backgrounds in science, and so there's not a lot of women in the science field. So when you show up somewhere where you're one of the few, it almost exacerbates that feeling that you do not belong in this space, that you have not earned the right to be in this space, and you're not as smart as all the other people in that space. So once you become aware, and I agree, get the coach, all those things, but also learn to start reframing. That's probably the best thing for me, is to start reframing situations, because sometimes we'll make a mistake and we allow that one mistake to reinforce. Yeah. See,
You're trying to come back. But you look real powerful.
I knew it. I was incapable.
So Tanisha, we may ask you to chime back in a second once your signal gets a little bit better. Right now we're frozen. As we allow her to get resituated. Kara, Christina, do you have any thoughts on this before we move to the next?
You gotten
Oh, we lost her again. And you're back. But frozen again. It is amazing. I agree, Brandy. It is an amazing shot. Tanisha, can you say something?
I'm back, but you all can move on.
No worries, no worries. I do want to touch on one more question before we get ready to close out the session. It's so crazy how fast an hour will fly by. But a lot of people, especially our allies, are always questioning, what should I be doing? What can I do to help improve the situation? And so I'd like to hear any advice you may have for a non-Black person that is an ally that wants to help to promote a more inclusive environment at their organization. What piece of advice would you give them to help support this inclusive environment and to help improve representation within a room?
I think a lot of the work that needs to be done by those who have been in positions of leadership and influence and decision making, a lot of the work that needs to be done now is internal. And really assessing what role they have played in organizational culture, what they have aligned themselves to that maybe wasn't inherent when they joined the organization, but what ideologies, what decision-making practices have you conformed to that aren't right? And really, really finding what role that they've played and taking responsibility for it and doing something different moving forward. And so then that begs the question, well, what is right and what is wrong? And that just opens up Pandora's box. But something that I think that can happen in real time is to not overlook people of color that are to your left and to your right, because we're there. We're so few and far in number at times that it seems, I'll speak for myself, that it's easy for you to overlook me. I'm the only one in the room. You know, we're small in number. Our voice, there's no voice equity, like Tanisha was saying. See me, engage with me. Some of the best decisions, the easiest decisions are made because of personal connection. But whatever has been in the way of even just seeing me, engaging with me, I'm a person. Yes, I'm a force. I'm a person first, though. Talk to me. Get to know me. I promise you won't forget me once you do. But I think a lot of that can happen, just bringing humanity into organizations. I think that has been lost at significant levels. And it's just, it's a lot of places are in bad shape. So that's what I would say for now.
I would say for an organization to add to that is to, if you are in a room and you recognize there's only one person, like one woman, one Black person, one Black woman, after the meeting, you can ask a question, and we probably just ask informally. I mean, did you ask them, did they feel heard in the meeting? Because you would be surprised that, they may not share it in that large, meeting. Hey, I don't feel heard. But if you are a person who wants to become aware and wants to be that ally, after that meeting, have a one-on-one. Hey, like, if I was the only one, Kara, was there anything that you wanted to share in the meeting that you felt, you couldn't, or you were afraid of it was being misinterpreted? Do that and ask how they're feeling. Ask, what it is. Or if you find someone who's more assertive and who's gonna speak up, because some of us will speak up, even though we're the only one, we will speak up. When we do speak up, right? Amplify that voice, champion, and say, yeah, I hear you, and yes, and there's a little thing that I learned in improv that I think goes so far across every spectrum, is the yes and method. Yes, I heard what you said, but not a yes but, because then when you say yes but, you just automatically just cut off anything that I just said. Though you're thinking you're helping by saying, let me see another perspective. You can just simply do that by adding to what was said by that person who's already in a position where they're the only voice, in that room. So that is something that you can do. Amplify the voice that's there and step outside and ask questions. How did they feel? Anything else they want to share on a one-on-one basis? And use your position of privilege, because you do have one. Use it to take it to the right places where to move the argument forward.
Yeah, I like how Danielle brought up the self-reflection piece, because being inclusive is intentional, right? Like you have to make sure that it's every decision you're making, I don't know, it's not like breathing for most people. You have to self-reflect, I had this opportunity. Was I being fair and equitable when I decided who to present the opportunity to, who to give it to? That's it's intention. So constant self-reflection, and also, Kara brings up when I'm there, do this, but when we're not around, are you sharing our career goals with others? When you have, if there's a meeting that you think that someone should be at and they're not there, or a meeting that will help their career, are you inviting and bringing people along to those meetings? Are you endorsing black people, but black women specifically when we're not around? So just think about actions that you could also be performing when we're not in the room to make sure we get in the room and get other opportunities, and just remembering to be intentional.
Alexis or Tanisha?
Yeah, so I've been debating. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I've been debating how to formulate and articulate this thought that I'm having, but I just have to be real because I'm 51 years old. I'm probably one of the older ones, and I feel like I've tried to be so tactful and diplomatic all my life and, framing things, but I want to speak directly to other Black female executives right now, because I think your conversations were to people, allies who may not be African-American women, and how they can show their allyship, their sponsorship, their championship. I have heard from a lot of young Black, it's not been my experience, but I've heard where they said other Black women did not help them and did not champion them. And so this is a conversation from me to other Black female executives who are in positions to help those coming behind us. Sometimes I think there's a fear that we will be seen as biased, like we're helping them, of course you'd help another Black woman, but I don't think other groups think that way. I don't think when they're helping other people, they think they'll be viewed as, oh, I just helped someone who looks like me. So I think that's something we need to be mindful of and dismiss it. I'm just going to put it that plain. We also need to be careful of our own biases and our judgment. So when I talk about natural hair, as I was coming up through the ranks, that is one area where I saw an opportunity for Black women to support other Black women. We should be okay with however Black women choose to wear their hair, whether it's straight, it's wigs, it's weaves, it's braids, it's whatever. But I think sometimes we have accepted a European or Eurocentric beauty standard as well, and we dissuade young women from wearing their hair naturally and being their authentic selves. And we have embraced some stereotypes about our own people that I think work against. So this is a conversation from me to others who are helping those come behind us. One, don't get through the door and slam it. That's one. Two, that we are also capable and we're in positions to provide allyship and sponsorship. Do it. And third, do not beat each other down. We must lift each other up.
I think that point was much needed to the conversation, because we need to be our guys. And so until we set the stage for that to happen, how can we expect others to do it as well? So absolutely, that's well needed conversation. Alexis?
Yeah, so I agree with a couple of the comments that have been made that for white allies, we really need you to reflect on your own actions. Whatever has been internalized from, indoctrination, stuff you didn't agree to, but it is in your brain, to really reflect on that, see how it manifests in the workplace and in other areas of your life. I guess for me, I think that white allies should have accountability partners, don't necessarily reflect and isolate. Talk to other white people, pull people in, recruit people in, and make sure that you are on the right path and you don't deviate or come to some different other harmful assumption about minorities in the workplace. I also think, and this is based off of the actresses Jessica Chastain and Octavia Spencer in the movie The Help. Jessica Chastain helped Octavia, she told Octavia Spencer how much they were making. They had a conversation about what they were making off the movie, and Jessica Chastain encouraged Octavia Spencer to ask for more money because she deserved it. She was a huge part of the movie. She had a lot of screen time, and that that helped Octavia Spencer make more money. So I guess for white allies, I think that it could be important to talk about how much money you make. Last time I checked, Black women make 67 cents on the dollar for what a white man makes. Be transparent about what you make. If there's a discrepancy, advocate for that Black colleague to be paid what they're worth.
Great point, Alexis. Yes, our equal pay day is coming up in August. So our equal pay day to make what our white counterparts earned in 2019 comes up in August. So we're still working just to get caught up to last year. I really do appreciate everyone's comments, thoughts, insight on everything that we were talking about. Before we get ready to close out, we did want to share a quick poem that comes from a poet named Icon, which is called Black Woman Steps Up to the Mic. Really, we think that the words that she talks about kind of really encompass a lot of the things that Black women go through and some of the thoughts that they have as they are approaching different situations. So we do want to share that quick poem via YouTube, and then we're going to give you all the panelists an opportunity to share their contact information. We're going to close out the session. So give me 1 second just to connect to our poem.
Black woman steps up to mic. Black woman has a poem gestating deep inside her belly, can feel the painful pulse of contraction, her mouth fully dilated, but Black woman is afraid to push the poem from her lips for fear that the crowd will call her poem ugly, its cries unworthy of being heard, or even worse, they will try to kill it. You see, Black woman has become accustomed to having her babies slaughtered. Black woman is accustomed to the same kind of death herself. Black woman feels like she should change her name from mother to martyr. Black woman is even afraid to call herself Black woman too many times in this poem because she has been taught that she is too insignificant to be acknowledged. Black woman steps up to mic. But before she can even speak a word, she already hears the crowd's thoughts. Shut up, bitch. Nobody wants to hear another one of your Black woman poems. Besides, nobody can hear your dog whistle of a voice besides other Black bitches. Black woman steps up to mic. Prays that she gets it right. Realize that her voice made the only darkness in a sea full of white. She prays that telling her own story will be stronger and more powerful than the men who try to do it for her or to her. You see, everyone wants a piece of Black woman, but Black woman can't even speak her own piece. Black woman tries to seek peace between the mic and the crowd in what feels like light years of space, and light travels faster than sound. For Black woman knows that they will see her before they ever truly hear her. Black woman steps up to mic, cognizant of how she appears in front of a jury who don't see her as their peer. Texas Grand Slam got her feeling like a lone star. Black woman doesn't want to appear too woman, too Black. Black woman is told never to hurt, that she don't feel a thing, that her melanin and estrogen cancel out the human in her DNA. Black woman is told that her sorrow is a false alarm that goes off way too often, while white privilege gets the siren it struggles all over the stage. Black woman steps up to mic, feels the urge to push but doesn't want to tear, doesn't want them to interpret weakness from her tears. She doesn't want to be called a crybaby. So she rocks her poem gently in the back of her throat and whispers to it, "Don't cry, baby." Instead, yell. Wail like you want nothing more than to be born and to live. You press your chin down into your chest and you push like you deserve to be here. You push like you a virgin. You push like you trying to deliver a savior into this world. Black woman steps up to mic. Black woman speaks.
So we're going to go ahead and begin to wrap up our conversation. I know Tanisha had to leave. She has another meeting that's starting in a second, but I do want to thank her for joining us. Tanisha, if you real quick want to drop your contact information for the people, let them know how to best reach you before you have to drop off, please feel free to do so. Oh, you're muted. Hold on, we can't hear you. You're muted. Unmute.
I said I can be reached on LinkedIn. That's the best way. I have another meeting started. I wanted to make sure they couldn't hear. I can be reached on LinkedIn though, Tanisha Agramonte. And thank you so much for this opportunity, Jeanita. I really appreciate all the other panel members. Great conversation. Thank you. It was an honor and privilege. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us. Enjoy your next meeting. Danielle, if you want to go ahead and drop your contact information, let us know how to best reach you.
Yes, definitely. On Instagram, I'm at Danielle the Coach. On Facebook, you can find my Facebook business page at Danielle the Coach as well. I'm on LinkedIn, it's Danielle Graves. And you can also visit my website, which is daniellethecoach.com.
Keep it nice and simple. And then Alexis.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn as Alexis Bennett. My Georgia Tech email address is abennett72@gatech.edu.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. And so as we get ready to close out, I just really want to thank again our panelists for joining this discussion. I thank the audience that's watching us live right now and those that are going to tune in later. We appreciate you all sharing your experiences, your stories, your thoughts, and really touching on some vulnerable moments and coming here with such honesty and candor about your experiences. We do look forward to hosting more series in this event or in this space and allowing more women to share their stories on this platform. So thank you all and everybody that joined us for the second part of Can You Hear Us Now? Black Women in the Workplace. Again, thank you on behalf of myself, Jeanita Pritchett, and the other co-founders, Kara Robinson and Christina Jones. Please enjoy the rest of your day and thank you so much for joining us during your lunch hour. Have a great day and talk to you guys later. Bye.